Hey, good Wednesday. Welcome in, everyone. It is Dom time. I'll have a little quiz for Dan coming up. Politico asked the presidential contenders on the Republican side, such as they are, Will Hurd and Asa Hutchinson was included. What are their top 20 songs? What songs inspire them? Asa Hutchinson said, Ophelia. Oh, man. I don't have William Hurt's. Ophelia. Yes. But it'll be interesting to see if you guess. Well, that's kind of crazy, but which one said in their top 5, Jolene, Dolly Parton?
Jolene. Who would that be? I'd say DeSantis.
That's an interesting one. Yeah, he didn't even enter. They looked over these. They probably
that's a trick question then.
They probably poured over for your
All right,
year.
Jolene, I got Nikki Haley.
No, she
Really?
did not. No, Nikki Haley went with a lot of female artists, but not Jolene. Vivek Ramaswamy.
No, that's a lie. That's a political move on Vivek Ramaswamy trying to capture a
listen
Midwestern
to
vote.
Vivek. This guy.
No way is Vivek listening to Jolene in his headphones.
Now,
you know.
I'd have to put. I know it. People cannot believe it. I'm as bad as Vivek Ramaswamy. I could possibly put in my top 10 songs if I did a list. Lose Yourself, the great Eminem.
I think when you did do your top 10 songs, and I believe Lose Yourself by Eminem was like number 4 or 5.
It is, because he captures the essence of life there. The guy's a genius with that. I believe him.
He captures the essence of life.
He does.
Mom spaghetti on his sweater already.
I'm not going lyric by lyric. I'm just going by what the guy captures. By the way, the Secretary of Education of all people, Dan, just Google it, because we can't say any of them on the air, the lyrics, put out his list of songs on his playlist as he was traveling the country, school to school. Wow. You talk about sexually explicit. Yep. It's amazing.
Okay.
Then he pulled down the tweet after that.
Like, why would you release that if, yeah.
Then he pulled, what the heck is that guy thinking?
Is he like trying to be relatable here?
Yeah. So here are Vivek Ramaswamy. This guy's buttoned up. Lose Yourself. And then Rondo Alia.
Rondo.
How
do you spell it for me?
Rondo Alia.
How do you spell Alia?
Alla.
Okay.
Tercia. Turca.
It's Ronda alla Turca. It's a Mozart.
Yes. Then Centuries by Fall Out Boy. Believer by
Imagine we all know this song.
Dragons. Okay. Yes. And then Jolene.
You know what this song's used in?
No.
You ever see The Truman Show?
Yes.
It's whenever he does his daily go about his life. So I wonder if Vivek turns this on as like going about my daily life, like background music.
I just think this guy is a bit too studied up here. You know what I mean? They really, DeSantis didn't answer, but the big guy did. Who is it that said Thunder Road is the number one song?
Well, the big guy. Yes. Literally the big guy.
Yes.
Yeah,
now,
Chris Christie?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he followed the rules. You were only allowed to put different artists down. You couldn't put more than one for an artist. God knows what he would have put down. His second song was I Saw Her Standing There, the Beatles. But Thunder Road, that's Christie. I know that would get you. Nikki Haley was even more buttoned up, I think. Her list, I Love Rock and Roll. I Want You to Want Me. She's a Beauty. We Got the Beat. Call Me from Blondie. Peace Train from Cat Stevens.
It's a good song.
Well, despite the fact that he has leanings that are away from being a peace train. Yes.
It's much better than Bruce Springsteen, though.
I know. Thunder Road with Christie.
Actually, they're kind of in the same.
And then Christie went through the whole thing about how it's one last shot and all that. I'm sticking with the great Eminem on my list.
Yeah. How about Taylor Swift covering Eminem?
We may have to do the big list again tomorrow. All right. Now, Guy Shiraki was on the show yesterday. Wrote a great column, as he told us he would, at Broad and Liberty. Guy from Chester County. And he raises just one of the most fundamental questions I've ever had. What the hell happened to the Philadelphia suburbs? In other words, He's talking about the prison situation as a perfect example. It's not just one thing with this guy. They had somebody escape in May. Now, though,
Same
suddenly
way.
they've given authorization to shoot him. They didn't call in the state police. They didn't have dogs to track him. And Democrats are the ones in charge out there in Chester County. They're in charge overwhelmingly in Delaware County. Montgomery County's Little Philadelphia. Philadelphia is Little Havana, or whatever is the most left-leaning we can find. I mean, Danielle Outlaw would probably be welcome in some of these suburbs. What happened to these people in the suburbs? And it plays out in national elections. What's your theory? What is it Guy talks about that's happened? I thought Chester County was vaguely a little bit still Republican. The only county, and even there, I mean, the DA's great. And we know a lot of the police chiefs, et cetera, out there. Ben Salem is an example. But the two commissioners there are out of control. That Bob Harvey or Harv guy, whatever it is, Bob, and Marseglia, they've been among the worst when it came to COVID. Dr. Damsker has got his head shaved the last time I saw him, and he's below the basement now. It's going to be interesting to see what Bucks County does as COVID starts to sniff around again. So if you're out in the suburbs, what have you noticed? Maybe if you lived in an area for a period of time. Can't blame Philadelphia forever just coming to the suburbs. People must want some of these Democrats. And the point Chiraki makes, and he made yesterday on the show, this prison thing, they're really not serious. They're just not. Would any serious person put Danielle Outlaw in charge of anything, let alone life and death? I'm putting my hands. Think about it. And the biggest criticism out there of smart people, she never showed up. She was never in the center of the action. She's not like a Rizzo or some of these other police chiefs. They're there. They're on the front lines. All right. Now, Dan, you know why I sent that to you yesterday and said it? That's the immortal man. That's Les Miserables. They just keep on adding nonsense. First of all, what the hell did Donald Trump have to do with Danielle Outlaw succeeding or not succeeding?
I love it. It's hilarious because if you think about it, the crime spiked even further after Trump left office.
Right. Biden has been in there of her tenure. Let's see. Well, 21 to 23. He's been in there longer or just about the same as Trump. And this idiot says it. The media just stand there like nobody doesn't raise their hand with Les Miserables and go, well, wait a minute. What's this about Trump? What did Trump have to do with it? Please explain how Trump had to do they ever have to explain anything?
Nope.
And I get it. Philadelphia, we know, is dystopian, progressive, stupid, moronic, all of that. What the heck happened to the suburbs? How is it the suburbs? Now, one theory, but I don't think that explains it fully. You have the smarter, more affluent people, but liberals, progressives, escape Philadelphia, bring the same values to the suburbs. Then they had kids, and these kids grew up even worse. And they're replicating in the suburbs exactly what went on in Philadelphia, except it takes longer to ruin everything. How did they do this in Chester County? It's pathetic what's going on with this guy. Now, somebody who's not stupid, and the reason I bring it up, that it has to be addressed. Governor Josh Shapiro is strongly backing Kendra Brooks. Now, Kendra Brooks in this Working Families Party, she's a socialist. These are not ordinary Democrats. Bob Brady has already said if you're in the Democrat Party in Philadelphia and you don't endorse the Democrats running for city council, you endorse these progressives, you're out. Here, the governor, who portrays himself as this bipartisan, I get things done. Here's why I'm bringing it up. This guy is incredibly dangerous. He is as partisan as anybody I've ever seen. You see what he did on abortion just recently, viciously taking away these centers that counsel women about another way They can still go and get an abortion, but they go there to get help to try to figure out whether there is support there. He's taking that support away. He wants more abortions. He's crazed. And he was lucky enough that a moron like Doug Mastriano was running against him. What the hell is wrong with Republicans in Pennsylvania? Now we're on it. But Josh Shapiro's dangerous. If he doesn't run for president this time, he will run the next time. He is the great masquerader. Maybe his son will be vice president, be better than Kamala Harris. By the way, yesterday, I think we're making it it's not shameful. It just shows how out of it Biden is. Biden putting the medal around a recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor, I would arguably say, I think it's without a doubt, the highest honor you can get in the military. Civilian, I mean, there's no higher honor than that. You can have an Oscar, you can have anything you want. I would go with, let me show you the Congressional Medal of Honor. By the way, we all know those guys are the worst interviews. They're heroes. They don't like to talk about. I've interviewed, except for one, at Andy's Diner, the guy putting Boilermakers away at 10 in the morning over in Conshohocken.
True.
He's a guy who fired a flamethrower for 8 hours at the Japanese on Okinawa. Woody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredibly hard to get a veteran to open up about his time serving.
Oh, particularly these guys.
Even in personal life, but even more so on air.
Yeah, I know. And, after a while, you just give up. You just keep talking. You just can't. Well, don't you want to? Come on. Are you kidding me? Can't you hear what I'm hearing here?
Yeah.
He walks down the center aisle without any handshake or anything else, and he just walks out of the room. I don't think he's disrespectful. I think he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know what he's doing. We ought to center in on that rather than the fact that Biden was dissing someone who is a recipient of that. All right, Dan, do we have Ron DeSantis ready to go?
Yeah, he's in the green room.
Oh, okay, good.
Oh, you meant the clip.
Yeah.
No, that's good to go. That's Matt DeSantis. So
that's Matt DeSantis.
Okay, yeah. No, Ron DeSantis clip is good to go.
All right, here is Matt DeSantis yesterday.
No, Ron DeSantis.
Right, Matt DeSantis. Some DeSantis.
One of the DeSantises.
Yes, I think you're about the same height. Here is Ron DeSantis with Kayleigh McEnany. And Kayleigh's not going to say anything to him. Oh, do I wish I would say, with all due respect, are you kidding me? Listen to his crafted response now on abortion. And you know how I've been hitting this? If Republicans don't come up with better answers, he's got none. He's asked about it. He's got the 6-week heartbeat bill. Listen to what he says. Women really don't want to have abortions. I have to admit, I don't know if that's the case or not when women are in that situation.
Senator Rubio has proposed the Unborn Child Care or a Child Protection Act that would essentially give child support from the moment of conception. Is that something you'd consider? It would force states to force men to give women.
Most of these women do not want to have abortions, but they feel like they have no other options because they get no support. And that's because a lot of these men are nowhere to be found. They should absolutely be providing support.
All right. Is this the road to go down? Okay. Now it's got appeal. Yeah, let's get these guys, these impregnators, these guys, that's all that they're doing. I agree with that. But is this the winning strategy here on this abortion thing? Now, she set him up. He was a little bit boxed in. He could have pivoted toward saying something else. I guess the Rubio Act then wants to make these men pay. Is that it? If they knew these guys were paying, they wouldn't get an abortion? I don't believe that. I think in a great number of cases, they don't want to be with the guy. They don't want to have any of this, and they're going to get the abortion. Is that the way out of this? This is a new angle. The guy's got to pay by law. And that will cut down on abortions. I'm not saying I don't agree with it, but I'm not leading with that to kind of stop Democrats from nothing else but talking about abortion. It's the silent, the dog whistle, beyond the dog whistle. That's exactly what they're going with here. All right, 855-839-1210. This question today is in honor of Dan, who is an inveterate reader. We've known that before, particularly of Shakespearean plays. Today is National Read a Book Day. So we thought,
Stop.
give us a film or TV show adapted from a book, something really good.
Yeah, a good one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Not a
well,
bad one, a good one.
yes.
There's a lot of bad ones out there, Don, but we want
Yeah.
good ones today.
I'd have to say it's been voted even by PBS, like, hundreds of thousands of people have voted for it as the #1 American book, except over in Haverford Township School District, where they won't teach it. To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, it's a great movie too.
I like the film better than the book. Gregory Peck. Stand up, child. Your father's walking through.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. A shiffer rope. I didn't know what a shiffer rope was. It's apparently a French name for some drawers.
Yeah, what
or
is
something.
that?
It's a chest or something.
Okay.
But the way she goes, a shiffer rope. All right. I can't do it as much today. Dan, what do you have?
Probably one of 3 books that I voluntarily read in my entire life.
Okay.
Is a Fight Club, which was
okay.
also just a fantastic movie. So I'm going to take that one off the board as well.
All right. So we got that going on. That's the side question. Give us.
Can't even pronounce the author's name. Chuck Palahniuk? Is that how you pronounce it?
I'm not sure.
Palahniuk?
I got a lot of pronunciations in my head today. Rose been going over with
really,
me.
Crazy
one
right
bit
now.
of copy here. I got 11 names. I can't. May have to go slow with that. All right. 855-839-1210. That's how you get on board. Dr. Marty McCary will be here at 12:30. Haven't spoken with him in a while. He's out there because we're starting to see around the edges more masking, more COVID talk. Dr. Jill Biden has COVID. Whoopi has COVID. Well, you get those 2 things going right there. So when you
Does
saw
Whoopi have whooping cough?
Yeah. When you saw Biden walk out from that veteran yesterday, did you say what a disrespectful lowlife he is? In many ways, that's true. Or did you say, wow, it's even worse than imaginable? By the way, Kamala Harris, the Inquirer, is all over this, is in Indonesia for a conference. And she said, yes, if the president were ever unwell, her terms, my duty as vice president would be to step in. Oh, my God. Just the mere thing. Look, I never thought Joe Biden would be president. When we're living through it somehow or another. But Kamala Harris, oh, my. 855-839-1210. That's how you get it.
What's a Walt Disney World thrill feel like? There's only one way to know. Go win a magical vacation package to experience an amazing collection of thrills. On Talk Radio 1210 WPHT, you and your family take control of the Millennium Falcon or launch into the exhilarating world of the Grid on the all-new Tron Light Cycle Run, presented by Enterprise. It's one of the
I wish her well. She did a terrific job, and in very difficult times, unprecedented difficult times of pandemic, of civil unrest, of Donald Trump for 4 years.
Yes, that's a keeper. I knew you'd love that one. That's La Miserable, the former mayor, the mayor in exile for a year collecting the check. But he can deliver when he's when he's talking about getting wine at Wegmans or the Oaks Gun Show or Trump. That's why Danielle Outlaw couldn't succeed. It was Trump, I tell you, COVID, all these others, unprecedented. As if she cares. Where's the slightest sense of any connection, how could you say, I can say it. And the tell is, with John McNesby yesterday, she was never routinely seen out there in the middle of the action, say, as he said, people working overnight in the hard parts of the city, driving through, how are things going? None of that. No, she didn't have to. She checked 2 boxes. That's what it's all about. Just a disgraceful 3.5 years, whatever it was. But Trump was the cause of a lot of this. Thank you, Jim Kenney.
I love it. I just love the complete lack of accountability to not even recognize that maybe myself, Mayor Kenny, is at all a contribution to her failures. Or, maybe those policies of that name we can't mention, Larry
exactly.
Krasner. Let's blame Trump. Yeah.
And the rest of the media, this is a big moment. They know the police commissioner, the choice for the new police commissioner, and yet there's no assessment of her by the Inquirer, by local TV news, no experts. Now, I'm not on Inside Story until a week from this Friday. I wish I were on this week.
Yeah.
There'll be defenders there, Dan. And, and in some cases, race gets involved and all the rest of it. My God.
Oh, come on.
What about Donald Trump?
Yeah.
You're not talking about Donald Trump in that.
Like where I think he's going with that, he's trying to say that the unrest that led to something like the George Floyd situation here in Philadelphia led to the spike in crime that we're seeing here in the city. I mean, they often blame coronavirus, but if we're being honest with ourselves, it started just before that with the George Floyd situation and all that, right?
Yeah.
So like, I don't mean to cut you off, but it's like, you can blame Trump, or you can look at the way you yourself, the mayor, responded to that, and the DA, and the attitude that you've directed towards police, the environment that you've created for police officers that they do not want to work in your city. So when you talk about making it hard to be a police commissioner here in Philadelphia, it's your fault. It's the way you responded during that entire situation, you and the rest of progressives, liberals, that has led to the environment we're seeing spread out across the country of just a complete lawless society.
And the one thing that she did that I support, she backed away from, she doesn't get criticized for, the cops do, the use of tear gas on 676. I'd have a helicopter right there dropping it all over the place. You had mobs of people with cars flying at them 50, 60 miles an hour. You had to get them out of there. She ordered the use of tear gas. They're moving away from that's the cops. We saw the one cop spraying people, et cetera. They did exactly the right thing, dragged them out of there. They have no right to block 676. And the only reason during the George Floyd summer that anybody went to jail in a serious way was due to Bill McSwain. Remember how he tracked through Etsy, the clothing site, whatever it is, that woman who was a masseuse from the suburbs, had the flame-resistant gloves on, setting on fire police cars right there in front of City Hall around hundreds of people. He did it. They would have let it go. They would have let people blow up stuff, ravage stuff, loot stuff. It's the language of the unheard. We have Dr. Marty coming up, but a little bit later today, Byron York is a great columnist, has a story that reflects why some aspects of the January 6th sentencing are out of whack. It's a story of a guy who rioted during the George Floyd summer. And in burning down a building, they didn't know some guy had got knocked out, was in the rubble. He killed him. And the Biden Department of Justice went to bat for this guy, saying he shouldn't get a severe sentence, even though he killed a man, because he was rioting in good faith, and rioting is, quote, the language of the unheard. The language of the unheard. So if we're going to let a guy essentially get a slap on the wrist for burning to death a guy, then what about these sentences for January 6th? Now, in Dom's world, I would sentence all these people, or at least the ringleaders, to severe sentencing, case by case, like Zach Rell, the local guy. I think he deserved a severe sentence. The Proud Boys guy, definitely. But these people in the George Floyd summer, they deserved it too. Why didn't they get it? Then the January 6 people get the book thrown at them. There's inconsistency here. When you have inconsistency, that's a big problem. So I'll lay it out. It's detailed. Great work by Byron York a little bit later on. Coming up, Dr. Marty makes a house call here because Dr. Fauci has been on the loose on CNN and other places, and we'll talk to him about what do we have to expect as we move into another COVID fall. Hey, get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel. In partnership with Valley Forge Casino, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. All customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. I really like the FanDuel app, and now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use. You can be on everything from spreads to player props and more. Visit FanDuel.com/Tom. Kick off the NFL season with the offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel Sportsbook, official partner of 1210 WPHT, official partner of the NFL. You have to be 21 plus, present in Pennsylvania. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem, 1-800-GAMBLER. The NFL Sunday Ticket offer ends 9/18/23. No refunds. Terms and embargoes apply. $100 off the NFL Sunday Ticket, not YouTube TV. YouTube TV base plan required to watch YouTube TV. Redemption requires a Google account and current form of payment. Commercial use excluded. Subscription renews. Cancel anytime. Dom Giordano show. Big issues, big guest out there. I mean, this guy's in more airports. He's in demand. Whatever we're trying to reach him, and he's good enough to come on, pay a house call. America's doctor from Johns Hopkins University, Dr. Marty McCary. Dr. Marty, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. I like how Dr. Marty plays his politics. Go with Eagles right away. There
Is
you
Dr.
go.
Marty a Giants or a Ravens fan?
A Ravens fan, right?
I love it.
Oh, very
that's
good.
awesome to
All
hear.
right, Marty, I'm glad to hear that. So, America's former doctor, Dr. Fauci, goes on CNN, and it was kind of interesting what he said. What lessons, give us, I know the number one lesson, if I could be presumptuous, you would say that just gets drowned out, and I wish it came through. COVID wouldn't have been worth it, but what you always talk about, the underlying causes of this diabetes, obesity, if we learn from that, wow, what a blessing it would be. But aside from that, what do we know factually right now, do you know, say about masking, vaccine, et cetera? What do we know?
Well, first of all, we just went through some of the biggest public health interventions in modern medical history. And so you've got to study the effectiveness of those interventions after you did them. But we have tons of data. And we just got the biggest final analysis of masking. This is not one research team or one group. This is the authoritative group in medicine called the Cochrane Review Group. And they looked at all 150 studies on masks and found they made no difference whatsoever. They do leave the door open a little bit and say, if you get two people in a room and you put on really tight-fitting N95 masks, sure, for a brief encounter, it can slightly reduce the infection. But given that COVID was so contagious and it's everywhere, you're just hiding from it. And it overall made no difference whatsoever.
All right, that's number one. And as I mentioned, the obesity and the underlying causes of who died, et cetera, we learned that sadly also. What about lockdowns? What did we learn from lockdowns?
Well, we learned that we imposed tremendous restrictions that had massive consequences on mental health, substance abuse, sexual abuse, and a lifelong learning loss for a generation of kids with no appreciable benefits. No kid was able to outrun this lion called COVID. You look at schools overseas, you look at schools that remained open while the public schools were closed in the United States. We have a ton of data. They have been looked at carefully by scientists. But for some partisan policymakers, and for Dr. Fauci, it does not give them the results they like. And so we're in a whole new era of medicine now. We've never seen this milestone moment where you don't critically appraise research based on the quality of the methodology. You accept it based on whether or not it gives you results you like. So the big studies on school closures found they had no impact. The big studies on masking kids in schools shows it had no impact. And the overall study of masks at a community and population level showed no impact. So what do you do when those studies are now out there, they're clear, they're published, and what they're doing is ignoring them?
Yes.
Dr. Fauci tried to downplay it, but he's really ignoring it.
Yeah, you said something important to me too. As you know, my bailiwick before I got into this, and I'm still used a lot, is education. I do believe for many of these kids, it's a lifelong learning loss because the schools didn't take all that money and just really pull in one-on-one tutoring, small group tutoring, urgency. They just kind of went back to business as usual as I see it. I don't see how kids are coming out of that.
Well, look, for a lot of Americans, the pandemic was a good thing. You got a chance to stay in your pajamas all day and jump on a couple Zoom calls. You didn't have to go into work. You didn't have to work as much. So that elite class of people in America, which is a lot of people who made policy, they imposed their ideas on kids in inner city Baltimore, where I work. And guess what? For them, the pandemic was unrelenting. The kids never showed up. They never logged on, and they got into a lot of trouble. So we have a lot of problems that came out from this sort of disconnect between the elites and those people on the ground. I talk to different groups in America, and what I find is when I meet a group like people who are general contractors, the Association of General Contractors, I don't have to guess how they felt about COVID policies and lockdowns. In general, people who like to work were very much hurt and were against them. And people who tried to avoid work were in favor of that. That's the general rule I saw.
Yeah, I think that without a doubt. Did we come up in scientific circles to say gain of function is even more dangerous than we thought? The stuff that there was an email the other day about the Wuhan lab and how Fauci knew about this either earlier than we thought, or it kind of locked it down that he knew and still thought that was the appropriate way to go.
Well, I will tell you this, Dom. It's amazing how angry people were during the pandemic at the unvaccinated, at the unmasked, at the parents who wanted their kids to go to school, the incredible vitriol and anger at everybody except the scientists that brewed this up in the lab or the scientists that funded it and covered it up. For them, there was no, let's just give them a pass. This was most likely an avoidable pandemic. And if you think it's worth considering the fact that this entire saga of 3 years was entirely preventable, you can't help but look at what is obvious to be a massive cover-up. Now, we don't know if Dr. Fauci's dollars went from his wallet directly to purchase test tubes through a chain of events in the Wuhan lab. That we're never going to be able to trace that. But one thing we do know is that Dr. Fauci early in the pandemic was frantic, leading a massive cover-up, telling scientists to write puff pieces saying it didn't come from the lab, when those same scientists told him it did come from the lab.
Yeah, exactly. I follow you on Twitter, of course, every day to see what you're up to. You talked about the president's communications chief saying that the new COVID vaccine expected to be FDA approved this week works. And you ask, how can she know since no human outcome studies were conducted? And I remembered, you said, all right, you were being fair about it, given the magnitude of the vaccine, the number of people vaccinated around the world and all. But from that point, we just willy-nilly continue with the boosters and new vaccines.
Well, first of all, thank you, Don, for saying that. I always try to be fair. My faith teaches me to always be kind. But honest to God, she's spreading misinformation. How can you say this vaccine works, the one that's about to be FDA approved in the next couple of days, and the CDC on Tuesday of next week are going to recommend it for every single American over age 12? How can we say it works when there's no human clinical data? Now, look, I wish it worked. I would like it to work. I'm hoping it might work, but you can't say that without any data. And if we look at our track record, the vaccines have myocarditis complication rates as high as 1 in 3,000 young males. There have been deaths from the vaccine, albeit them rare. And there's concerns that you could pump 6 vaccine doses into someone or 100, and you're not going to change their propensity to get the infection. So if it doesn't work and we're exposing young, healthy college kids to risks, why are we seeing 100 colleges with vaccine mandates today? That's my concern, is we're no longer listening to data and requiring studies. We're just having Pfizer and Moderna have private meetings with the White House. The White House declares that this works, everyone should take it. There's no human data, no clinical outcomes data. And then the FDA pushes it out there. No wonder only 17% of Americans took the last bivalent booster shot when it came out last fall. And by the way, some of those were required to by school and work. So Americans said, no, we want to see human data. Look, Pfizer made $100 billion on the pandemic. They can afford to do a randomized trial in a couple of weeks and show us whether or not it works before we push it on every single person, such that a 5-year-old girl is going to get 77 COVID doses in her average lifespan. Before we go there, let's see the data. Let's do the normal process and not make a mockery of our normal process. Otherwise, why do we have an FDA? Just, let Pfizer tell us what to do. White House announces it. And, we don't need an FDA.
Well, I think an outcome of this too, it's going to take a lot for, and thank God for people like you and a couple of others that we bring on, Marty, to come back to good advice, good scientific advice on this stuff. I mean, I don't want to see people disregard everything simply because of Fauci. And again, we all said this the first month or so, people were willing to buy in because we didn't know. Scientifically, how could you know? But over the period of time, that's why I was so glad today that you and I are doing kind of a what have we learned from this? The media disinterest in what have we learned, though? I mean, I'm in the media. You're in the media guy too, in a lot of ways, in addition to being a scientist and doctor. We're always looking for great material. Something like this is gold to do of what did we learn from this? And you could debate it, people like you, maybe others around the edges. But I think what you said today is exactly what we learned from this.
Yeah, look, if your kids are getting going to be required to have masks, your organization is going to mandate masks again, show them the Cochrane Review. It is the definitive body in all of medicine. I'm concerned as well, Dom. I had a friend tell me the other day he doesn't think he's going to get the flu shot this year because he just doesn't trust all these public health folks. Well, the flu shot probably is a good match this year. I'd recommend it. But this lack of distrust is hurting kind of credibility all the way around.
Exactly. Where do we follow you, Dr. Marty, on Twitter? And again, you coming out with another update on your standing book, or what are you working on now?
What I'm working on is, and yes, I'm on Twitter. What I'm working on is examples in modern medicine where we have made colossal mistakes, and every single professional group and journal just went along for the ride. Major consensus mistakes because we didn't look at the science. We never had good studies at the beginning. Opioids were not addictive. That was a 30-year mistake. All the consensus was wrong. 30 years. Heck, they even thought cigarettes were not bad for you. They thought saturated fat caused heart disease. That's now been disproven. I mean, that was a 50-year mistake. So we can't just go with the consensus. What we have to go with is the scientific method. And we've certainly abandoned that most recently during COVID.
When do you think the book will be coming out?
Gosh, I'm going to work nights and weekends to try to get it done, but it might be a while. Let's just say the Eagles will probably have another season before the book's out.
All right. And the current book, The Price We Pay, What Broke American Healthcare and How to Fix It. Dr. Marty, thank you as always.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
All right, there's Dr. Marty Makary. And Dan, we peel away the onion each time he's on. Now he's an Eagles fan, grew up in Pennsylvania. He mentioned his faith today. Just a wonderful, and my regret, you don't hear this in the political debate. Now, we haven't sorted out, well, maybe we have, who the nominee is going to be on the Republican side and Biden on the other side, maybe when that starts. But it's just because the media disinterested. It's gold to have that debate. What did we learn? Fauci just appeared on CNN on the Saturday show, and there was a lot of back and forth over that. Dr. Marty just learned out what we just put out, what we did learn, the Cochrane study, among others. We know that now. So why are we going down this path again? Because it's ideology connected to it. It's petty tyranny. They don't have to follow the science. Why is Dr. Damsker? Why can't Dr. Damsker come on the show? There's a perfect example. Those two stooges over there still in Bucks County. That alone, you ought to vote him out of office. That guy was doing so well. He was exactly on point. All right, 855. I mean, what's wrong with people out in Bucks County? Don't they read? Aren't they connected? Don't they connect the dots to anything? 855-839. Well, they think, wait, where did that Dr. Damsker guy go? He was out there. The whole state was listening to him. Where is he now? Oh, I don't know. Let's ask Bob Harvey about masking. Hey, Bob, what do you think? 855-839-1210. You get in. Hey, it's time for the Rescue Natural Supplement Labor Day sale, the ultimate celebration of savings and well-being. Right now, all Rescue and Neva supplements, they're slashed up to 70% off. Plus, enjoy free shipping with it. So whether you're searching for immune support, joint care, heart health, or that radiant glow, Rescue has health essentials for everyone. Take a break. Celebrate your workplace achievements with savings on a probiotic, omega-3s, vitamin gummies, and so much more. Call them today, 800-26-ALIVE, 800-262-5483. Speak to a knowledgeable product consultant, or you can shop online at res-q.com, res-q.com. Celebrate Labor Day. Up to 70% off. Again, up to 70% off Rescue products site-wide. No codes needed. Just call or go to res-q.com to get that Labor Day deal right now. Start feeling like a new you with Rescue. Great stuff from Dr. Marty McCary. By the way, we've been talking about since Monday this memorial to Nazi collaborators at the cemetery over in Elkins Park Now, a national Jewish group calls for the removal of this Philadelphia area monument to a Nazi SS unit. And the reason it's caught my attention the most, let's face it, it involves Ukraine. I saw in the news today, right before we came on, Defense Department officials trying to reassure everyone we've given uranium depleted materials to the Ukrainian army. And we've said we're sure they're going to handle them in the way that we want. All right, then. This is just, I used to be okay with Mike Pence. When I saw Mike Pence in that last debate, though, it was just sickening. It just, every time I see it now, he's hanging in, banging the abortion thing in an extreme way in Iowa, then it'll be over. But his position on Ukraine, Nikki Haley, Christie, and all the rest of us are just, Christie said last night on CNN, people that are against the position in Ukraine, we're just hoping Putin will go away. We don't understand the world. Really? Okay. We'll see. We'll see on that, how Americans feel about this, what we've already spent. You heard Jeff Andrew talking about it yesterday. Side question. National read a book today. Hit us with a book adapted into a film or TV show. TV show might be a little bit harder. Be interesting if you have one. Let's go to Joe of Exton, really early today. Hey, Joe, welcome in. How you doing today?
Fine, and how are you?
Good.
That's good to hear. The film producer Mel Gibson turned the book Bible into a film titled The Passion of the Christ.
So what did you think of the film, Joe, versus the book? Do you know both?
Well, yeah, I've seen the film. It's very interesting.
Yeah, well, I saw the film too on the first day that it came out. I've never seen anything like it in a movie theater before or since.
Any dry eyes?
There was a big thing of popcorn somebody brought in. What are you thinking? Right in the center aisle. They just dropped it and left it there.
Didn't eat any of it.
Yeah. I saw some guy eating licorice in the beginning, and he didn't eat all the licorice. Yeah, so that's a good one, Joe. I don't know the book enough to compare, but that was a blockbuster, Dan. It was nuts. And I think I got Mel Gibson's father on before it because there was a lot of rumblings about him. That was nuts. Walking out of that theater and people saying, how was the film? I'm all glassy-eyed, and they're, right in your face. How's the film? It wasn't like seeing, some rom-com or something.
Like the only other film that I think could give that kind of effect would be Schindler's List. Didn't you see that one in theaters? Was that Lou Dahl that saw that one?
Yeah, I saw it in theaters too.
Yeah.
I would say this had more, because of the hype, because of everything that went into it,
Yeah.
it was more difficult. Yeah, Schindler's List was easier than this because of all that. The crowds, the people, oh my God.
I just got a notification that, speaking of Jim Caviezel, Sound of Freedom's now the #1 movie in all of Latin America.
Wow.
Yeah.
That tells us something there too.
Yeah.
It's still stunning. By the way, Dan, you're told, and we're trying to get him on, that candidate for DA, Republican candidate, I guess, out in Chester County, holding a news conference today to lay out point by point. I hope Guy Shiraki's consultant. What the heck? They're not serious about public safety. This is an indictment of Democrats in the suburbs. That's exactly what it is. Up and down the line out there in Chester County. And they're not going to get away with it whenever they catch this guy. All right. Coming up, though, we have on an historian from UCLA. I'll ask him about Chip Kelly and the football team. They don't look so good. They had great uniforms, though. No. He says this monument to the Nazi SS unit, they weren't freedom fighters. They were joining with the Nazis fighting in Ukraine. Now, you've heard this story before because of Ukraine in the news so much. And I hate to remove monuments, but I kind of like a point from Dan. This monument sticks out like a sore thumb. It's to Nazi collaborators in Elkins Park. All that straight ahead on Talk Radio 1210. Let's talk about John Gilgee and Rhino Shield. There are certain home maintenance chores we'd all rather not do, like repainting the exterior of your home every 5 years. No one wants to do that. Here's an incredible permanent solution to that problem, Rhino Shield. Rhino Shield looks like paint, goes on like paint, but it never chips, cracks, or fades. It's ceramic coating. It's guaranteed for life. Never have to paint again. The local Rhino Shield owner, John Gilgee, great guy, friend of the program. I'm impressed with both the product and the company. It's perfect for any surface. You get the beauty of fresh paint, the maintenance of vinyl, even insulates your home. Comes with a 25-year guarantee that you can transfer if you sell your home. John meets with as many homeowners as he can himself. They've helped thousands of Delaware Valley residents, including many of my listeners, upgrade the look and quality of their home. Call him right now. There's still time to save an incredible 20% off. 20% off. Two ways. Visit myrhinoshield.com or call 844-RHINO-99. 844-RHINO 99. Dom Giordano Show. Welcome in, everyone. I am fascinated that the Inquirer, I guess, got tipped off. They're the first ones to talk about this. And we've talked about even the structure of this celebration of this Nazi unit. With Ukraine in the news so much, this has come up before. Some of these tensions that go way back in with Poland, Ukraine, Russia, all that. Joining us is someone that the Inquirer found with a lot of knowledge of this. Does he agree these were somewhat freedom fighters? That's why they're celebrated. The cemetery's right there in Elkins Park, this statue commemorating these people that are buried there. He's a professor at UCLA, Jarrett McBride, historian of Russia, Ukraine, and Eastern Europe in the 20th century. Focus is on mass violence, the Holocaust, inter-ethnic conflict, nationalist movements, and war crimes prosecution. Let's go to Professor Jarrett McBride here on the Dom Giordano Show. Professor, we haven't seen in recent years, I'm not sure if they're a little bit off from this, but we used to bring on somebody, Nazi war criminals in this country. I guess most of them are deceased. The last was that prison guard who I guess had to be 90 or so. So are we ended with all the controversies, all the searching from World War II?
Yeah, so I mean, this was a major issue that really came to the fore, particularly in the 1970s and then into the 1980s in the United States when it came to light that a number of individuals who were connected to atrocities during the Second World War, in particular on the side of the Nazis, had entered the U.S., Canada, and other places. So yeah, we would regularly see stories about this. A lot of journalists were writing about it. It was headline news. I mean, that's really slowed down over the last 5 or 10 years as most of these people are now deceased. One of the bigger cases actually somewhat connected to this division in question in Philadelphia was a case actually in Minnesota of Michael Karkos, who had actually written a memoir putting himself at the scene of crimes and had been living peacefully in Minnesota until the 2010s. So they still pop up. There's only been maybe a handful of cases in the last 5 years, but it's mostly a conversation that's in the past.
I don't know if you take a position on it. I do know what the Inquirer quoted you. I am with, say, the Confederate monuments and some of this stuff. They're part of our history, and I wouldn't be willy-nilly tearing all these down. I would replace them, or I would put in other monuments, other statements. But this one has nothing to do with our own history. It's just plopped down here. Is the argument, if it stands there, then it basically is just historical revisionism that these are not freedom fighters. Now, you're the expert on it. As far as I can tell, they're not. I understand the difficult position they were in. But if you're with the SS, I don't see how you're ever a freedom fighter.
Yeah, I mean, obviously from a position of a scholar, we would point out that historically, one man's freedom fighter, right, is another man's war criminal or problematic figure. So this certainly comes up across a number of conflicts. And I wouldn't take a strong position on it myself. I don't think that's my place as a historian. But I do think a role of a historian or a scholar is to provide accurate historical context so we actually understand what the division or these individuals were involved in during the war, right? Now that actually be clear, and then communities need to make decisions, right, about what they think is appropriate or not appropriate, whether that's the Ukrainian diaspora community in Philadelphia, the United States, or the city of Philadelphia, the state of Pennsylvania. I think people need to come together and actually assess what this group was involved in, what they did, and then decide, is this appropriate? Is this something we want?
Well,
right,
let me ask you, what is the tell for you here where you say they're not freedom fight? I mean, I would cut to the chase. I see a picture of, I don't know, Himmler here overlooking the
Right.
troops.
Sure.
As soon as I
Sure.
see that, my historical credibility, I give up and I think, hey, I know what's going on here. If you're involved
Sure.
in this, particularly in Ukraine, I haven't obviously read as much about the Holocaust as you, but I am fascinated by how the United States stood aside. I'm reading 1944 now, which is
Sure.
a fascinating book about FDR and how conflicted not to do something about this. So when
Sure.
I see a picture of Himmler, of all people, standing there overlooking these troops, there's no way you're coming out of this as a freedom fighter.
Sure, and that is a very strong position taken, I would probably say, by a majority of people. And I'm sure if you polled a majority of people in Philadelphia or U.S. citizens, they'd probably have the same view. Which is why, generally speaking, and in large parts of the U.S. and especially in Western Europe, especially Western Europe, you cannot get away with having these kind of monuments. Despite whatever complexity you want to bring to the story, right? This idea of Ukrainians trying to constitute their own independent state, maybe making a deal with the devil to participate in the creation of this division with an eye to fighting the Soviets or potentially World War III, which is what they were banking on. There's emphasis on those points from the Ukrainian side. But to your point, and I'm very sympathetic to that, at the end of the day, this was a criminal organization. The Waffen SS was declared at Nuremberg to be a criminal organization. We're pretty sure about 100% of historians would agree to that. And this division itself, it would have been maybe a stronger argument to make if this division itself wasn't connected to any particular crimes during its tenure in Eastern Europe. But that's also not the case, right? So it wasn't connected to the Holocaust, which I think is somewhat maybe confusing to your average observer. This group was not connected to any violence towards Jewish citizens in Eastern Europe, but they were connected to violence against Poles and other Ukrainians and other groups in the region. So they were connected to crimes during the war. And the overview, the larger umbrella organization was a criminal one. The German commanders in this unit were all war criminals, right? The people leading this particular division. So that's you can't escape that, even if you do. And you see the quotes in the article, and you can find it other places. Even if you want to hear from the Ukrainian community about the larger picture and the larger aspirations of Ukrainians at this time, I think it's pretty difficult to escape these other facts. And if you want to have a conversation about this division, you need to bring up these facts. So you need to bring up the facts of what they were involved in addition to whatever larger context and more kind of sympathetic information you want to bring to the conversation.
We're talking with Professor Jarrett McBride, and this, as you probably understand, maybe the Inquirer thinking it too, Professor, the focus on Ukraine now, and I believe that Zelensky has either removed or tried to push back on certain elements there where there were groups that were still celebrated that had this Nazi tinge to it. And of course, that comes up, not that I'm proposing, I'm the farthest from that. Putin's thinking about the Nazi element that was there, and that's all wrapped up in this. But it is a fact that celebrating this right here in Elkins Park is, to me, just outlandish.
Yeah, this has been an issue. Well, this has been a conversation since Ukraine gained independence in 1991 about how it was going to approach the more difficult parts of its past. It's been ongoing debates among historians and leaders in civic society. And it took an interesting turn after the revolution on the Maidan in 2014, because there was really a concerted effort to, in their words, decommunize the country. And that meant removing statues of Lenin and other communist leaders, renaming streets, and so forth, tearing down monuments. But the problem was some of those monuments, some of those streets were then renamed after people who did not have the best necessarily record during the Second World War. And that is kind of fed into the Russian narrative. Now, the Russian narrative and the narrative coming from Putin are not historically accurate. They're not taken seriously by any scholars that there are Nazis in Kiev right now or running the country. This is all absolutely ridiculous. But two things can be true at once. So that this is somewhat, that some of the lionization of some of these people with not good records is problematic and perhaps not helpful for an independent, free, sovereign Ukraine. And at the same time, it can be true that Putin's comments about Ukraine and his take on the Second World War are completely off base and offensive, right? I think kind of balancing both of those things out from my perspective is important.
While I have you here, because as I said, I'm really intrigued about this. What's your sense of Roosevelt and the reluctance, the foot dragging that went on here? I'm only about 3/4 of the way through 1944 of why we didn't intervene. It would seem to me resources bombing the rail lines is the first thing I thought about, to Auschwitz and these other places. Does not seem to be a huge expenditure of resources, particularly at a certain point when we had command, in order to mitigate at least what they were doing.
I don't have that. Is not my main focus. I would probably defer to American scholars on the topic. I mean, my understanding was the excuse was that it was going to risk pilots, and that those bombing runs would be more difficult than the ones that they were already
Okay.
undertaking. But I think the larger conversation that's evolved over time, that we didn't know as much or we were unaware. I mean, that's mostly been put to bed. So it does put the administration in a perhaps more difficult light with that new information that's come to pass over the last couple of decades. And I'm not actually totally sure what the kind of prevailing argument at this point is, but I know it's something that is still hotly debated.
Well, Professor, thank you very much. Pleasure to talk with you. I hope we talk again. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, and anytime. Yep. Thanks, Mike.
Boy, great guy, Dan. Even though the phone thing, my hearing's just sort of
No, it's something there.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, a little bit. Okay. So using the Borowski principles, this is not American history, a la Confederate. You know, I know there's a reluctance because we've seen what the mob on the left. Now you have a national Jewish group saying that they should remove this monument to the Nazi SS unit right here in Elkins Park. 855-839-1210. Dan, so you're on board with doing that?
Yeah.
I am too. I mean, it's shocking to me. You know what did it for me? The new picture that I saw, Himmler standing there reviewing the troops. That's it. You know, I mean, it just doesn't get. He's the architect of the Holocaust. He actually did it more than anybody. Right there in Elkins Park. And with Ukraine so much in the news and this divide in the Republican Party so big. I mean, the principal person, well, he hasn't been in the debates. So if he's in the next debate, Trump and Ukraine comes up, that'll be an interesting response. But DeSantis and Vivek against the others to varying degrees. And we're about ready to see another $22 billion they want. Jeff Andrew yesterday said he'd vote against it, even if it's in the hurricane bill. So give me a response to that right here in our area. This gigantic monument, and again, it's a Catholic cemetery. I'm not sure who exactly is in charge of that, the Ukrainian. It says St. Mary's Ukrainian Catholic Cemetery in Elkins Park, honoring this division of the SS. I mean, we've been through this before. Reagan going to that cemetery where SS were buried. The obvious thing is you just cannot be around this stuff. I'm glad to hear Jarrett McBride say the